Do you think you're overworked and underpaid? Well, you've got it easy compared to the hardest workers in the natural world. We're counting down the top 10 most extreme workaholics in the animal kingdom to find out just who puts in the most overtime. Discover that it's all work and no play when workaholics are taken to the most extreme. Earth is a planet of extremes. Extreme places and extreme animals. But some animals are more extreme than others. Join us as we count down to find the most unusual, the most extraordinary, the most extreme. Every week, 140 million Americans go to work. They spend an average of 2,000 hours a year on the job. That's more than any other human labor force in the world. And a growing number of people are spending evenings, weekends, and holidays in the office. These are true workaholics. They think that their job is the most important part of their life. And while animals may not sit at a desk, a similar thing can happen in the natural world. We're counting down those animals that make extreme sacrifices to get the job done. Our first contender gets to work in the forests of the Amazon basin when the rains come and the floodwaters rise. Countless species of fish breed in these waters, so there are many hungry mouths looking for food. That's why this spraying kerosene has come up with a novel way of protecting its eggs. It spawns not in water, but in the air. Spraying kerosene are the only freshwater fish in the world that lay their eggs out of the water. By locking their pectoral and tail fins together, the male and female coordinate their leap to land side by side on the leaf. Their ventral fins act as suckers, holding them onto the leaf long enough for the female to secure her eggs and for the male to fertilize them. The couple keep lunging until about 50 eggs are stuck in place. And if you think that's hard work, just wait till you see what happens next. If the eggs dry out, the babies will die. So the male has the job of keeping them moist. Using his tail, he splashes water onto his spawn. The spraying kerosene is number 10 in the countdown because just like clockwork, he keeps spraying the eggs once every minute of the day. Some humans also work in long shifts and spray water to save lives. Firefighters keep longer hours than most other workers, often being on duty for 24-hour shifts, and they can face a variety of hazardous situations. However, a recent study conducted by the National Fire Protection Association found that half of all line-of-duty deaths by firefighters were not the result of burns, but cardiac arrest. Obviously, this isn't a job for the faint-hearted, which is why these fire officers are getting suited up for some on-the-job training. Carrying over 45 kilograms of gear, they're about to climb to the top of the U.S. Bank Tower in downtown LA, the tallest building west of the Mississippi. Research has shown firefighters have long periods on duty in which they get little or no exercise. Then, in an emergency, there's a sudden, intense energy demand. If they're not in good physical condition, the stress can be just as deadly as the fire. That's why, even in the quiet times, the hard work continues, as Fire Officer Tony Guzman explains.
We never know when the call comes in, and we may have to hike 20, 30, 40 flights of stairs.
The spraying kerosene also puts its body on the line. By the time its eggs are mature, the male will have made over 6,000 flicks of his tail to ensure his brood have the best chance of surviving. But at least he only has 4 days of hard labor. Coming up in the countdown, we'll meet other workaholics that can sometimes work 24/7 every day of the year. At the bottom of the world, you'll find a group of workaholics that have one of the toughest jobs in the countdown. Only one animal tries to breed in the middle of an Antarctic winter. It may not look like it, but these male emperor penguins are hard at work. They're number 9 in the countdown because for 3 months they have to concentrate on their feet. That's because in this frozen wilderness, the only thing to build a nest out of is their toes. At the start of the winter, the females roll their egg into the male's brood pouch and then leave them to it. But this babysitting job is not as easy as it looks. Throughout the world's harshest winter, the male emperor penguins must delicately balance an egg on the top of their feet. For over 7 weeks, the penguins have to keep focused on their task. The slightest lapse in concentration could destroy their unborn chicks. If the egg is left on the ice, it will freeze solid in just 2 minutes. These emperors may put up with the worst working conditions on Earth, but there was a time when hanging out with a human royal family could be bad for your health. Back in the 17th century, nobody was allowed to discipline a young prince. So if he misbehaved, someone else took his punishment. They became the prince's whipping boy. Today in Tokyo, the whipping boy concept has taken on a new twist. Simply pay Akira Hareruya $8 and you can relieve stress by getting to hit him for a minute. Akira is a retired professional boxer, but he doesn't fight back, though he does protect himself with padding and fancy footwork. Not only does Akira raise money to pay off his debts, but he also provides a fun way for workaholics to unwind. Just like this human punching bag, emperor penguins can also take a lot of punishment. The males have to survive for 3 months without food. These dedicated dads can lose up to 45% of their body weight by the time the females return to the rookery. But all that hard labor means that the emperor penguin's babies get the best possible start to life. By timing the arrival of the chicks to the end of winter, they make sure that their babies have got all spring and summer to feed. They need to gain as much weight as possible if they are to survive the next big freeze. And that's why these penguins are number 9 in the countdown. After the long, hard winter, the parents can spend the rest of the year on holiday. Unlike some of the animals coming up in the countdown. If you thought our first 2 contenders toiled hard to bring up their babies, just wait till you see the effort some guys put into the housework. And later, what workaholic dedicates his life to building a love shack out of straw? You'll find the next contender in our countdown of most extreme workaholics on the job in the tropical rainforests of Australia. The male bowerbird is number 8 in the countdown because for up to 6 months, he spends every daylight hour building an arch of straw. This bower is not a nest. It's the ultimate bachelor pad, and the bowerbird fusses over it like the most obsessive human workaholic. While other birds use bright plumage to attract females, drab bowerbirds use straw and colored objects to get potential mates in the mood for love. Bowers range from simple straw curves to stunningly crafted towers that can last for generations. Each species has a particular fixation on specific colors. The fussiest collector is the satin bowerbird, who hoards anything as long as it's blue. These birds are nature's artists. Not only do they sculpt with grass and twigs, some also paint their bower with a stain made from chewed plants, charcoal, and saliva. Only one human artist is as fanatical as a bowerbird. Morris Katz from New York City loves to paint. In 1987, Morris set a new record for speed painting. He completed 153 paintings in only 12 hours. 55 were purchased before they were even finished. In a career spanning over 50 years, Morris has sold over 181,000 paintings, more than any other artist. Bowerbirds spend much more time on their works of art. If his bower is suitably impressive, in only 6 months a single male can mate with up to 50 females. But like many human workaholics, these guys have no time to raise a family. Females will have to build a nest and raise the chicks single-handed. That means this obsessive home decorator can afford to concentrate all his efforts on building bigger and better bowers. Our last two contenders were both males that put in long hours on the job. But still to come, we discovered just who wears the pants when it comes to working around the house. And later, how would you like to be sent off to work from the moment you're born? The stereotypical workaholic is a stressed-out, antisocial loner who has real problems forming relationships. Things are very different for our next contender, an animal that has to work well with others or die. Running in to number 7 in the countdown is the African hunting dog. Packs of these canine carnivores are constantly on the move, seldom spending more than a day in any location. They travel far and wide across a home range that can be the size of Rhode Island. But the hard work really begins when they go hunting. They take turns to chase after prey, relying on their incredible stamina. They can run almost twice as fast as a human sprinter for an hour at a time. Their hard work pays off because they're successful in over 60% of hunts. Compare that to lions that only have a 30% strike rate. That's why African hunting dogs are one of the most efficient killers in Africa. No wonder people say they're working like a dog. Some domesticated dogs also make a living from hunting, but they don't eat their prey. Aspen is a rescue dog at the Miami-Dade Fire Department, and with her sidekick, Captain Skip Fernandez, she's covered more territory than any African hunting dog. Together, they've traveled all over the United States and to places like Puerto Rico and Colombia. Aspen is one of a small team of urban search and rescue dogs trained to locate victims of building collapses, earthquakes, and bombings.
Let's see what you got.
It can be hard, grueling work, which is why in 1999, Aspen and Skip received the National Humane Society Award for Outstanding Services to Search and Rescue. Unlike Aspen, when the hunt is over, the work doesn't stop for African hunting dogs. While only the dominant female breeds, she can produce up to 20 pups in a single litter. That's a lot of mouths to feed, so everyone lends a helping hand, or in this case, stomach. Simply by licking the hunter's mouth, pups can encourage the regurgitation of food. It's a dirty job, but at least these nomadic workaholics don't have to worry about washing the dishes after dinner. Our countdown continues with an animal that really knows that a woman's work is never done, especially when you have to raise a family and bring home the bacon. The lioness is number 6 in the countdown because not only does she do most of the hunting, she's also got to bring up the kids. Her cubs need to be fed up to 15 times a day, yet she has to juggle a busy hunting schedule. That's because the amount of milk a lioness produces depends on how much food she catches. By herself, this demanding schedule would have her working around the clock. So, to avoid burnout, the girls work together. By hunting cooperatively, they can bring down much bigger prey. However, bigger prey means bigger risks. If anything should happen to one of the lionesses, the orphaned offspring will be adopted by one of its aunties, further increasing her workload. But lionesses aren't the only overworked mothers in the world. In the 1950s, only 12% of American mothers had a career outside the home. Today, more than 70% of American women are in paid employment, but they still do the lion's share of housework, spending an average of 22 hours a week on chores. Modern males only spend an average of 10 hours a week working around the house. And one survey revealed that men are least likely to spend time on ironing. But one group of Englishmen have invented a way of making the chore more appealing, as Phil Shaw explains.
Well, extreme ironing is the latest dangerous sports that combines the thrills of an extreme outdoor activity with the satisfaction of a well-pressed shirt.
The sport began in 1997 when Phil was faced with the choice of doing the laundry or going climbing. So, he did both. Now, people from all over the world compete in what's become the world's fastest growing extreme sport using an electrical appliance. If only this male was as enthusiastic about housework. Lions are only number 6 in the countdown because the males are definitely not workaholics. The king of the jungle is so lazy, he can spend 20 hours a day sleeping. The hard-working lionesses put up with him because he's the hired muscle. The much bigger males earn their keep by being around to make sure that the cubs are kept safe from predators and rival males. Lionesses may work overtime to make up for the idle lions, but as we continue down the countdown, we'll find both male and female animals that make life on the African plain look like a holiday. If you think that these big cats and little dogs work hard, just wait till you meet an animal that makes a 50-ton compost heap using nothing but its toes. And later, we'll up the ante with an animal that busily strips the leaves from trees, even though it can't eat them. Crashing in to number 5 in our countdown of extreme workaholics is America's largest and hardest working rodent. It's easy to see why people are said to be as busy as a beaver. On average, a beaver cuts down 216 trees every year. And since a single family can cut down more than a ton of timber every year, it's hardly surprising that the furry engineers can transform a gentle stream into a lake in just a few weeks. Using a mixture of logs, twigs, and mud, a family can construct a dam strong enough to flood land more than 2 kilometers upstream. Beaver dams are usually around 50 meters long, but the biggest dam recorded in North America was over 300 meters in length and wide enough to support a family car. Beavers are workaholics because even after the last twig has been laid, they're still on call 24 hours a day to make any running repairs. The slightest trickle sounds the alarm, and a rapid response repair team are on the scene in minutes. Beavers also build canals that run deep into the woods that help them to access more trees. The reason for all their hard work is to make a safe environment. Their artificial wetland provides protection from large predators like bears and cougars. And if an intruder does make it to the lodge in the middle of the lake, there's little chance of finding the front door. The lodge has multiple entrances hidden underwater. It's the perfect home security system. However, clever design is an important way to maintain a safe and efficient workspace for more than just rodents. Human workaholics are spending more and more time in the office, so researchers are trying to develop better working environments, as Jennifer Lai, manager of adaptive solutions for IBM, explains.
A vast majority of offices in the United States are cubicles. We think that it's about 80% that are open plan environment. They can't control the interruptions that they get. They can't control the lighting overhead, the temperature in the office. You know, many of these things where I often have a greater degree of control in my car than I have when I get to my office, where all I can do is flip the lights on or off. And so Blue Space puts the worker back in control.
Blue Space is a prototype of the office of the future. In addition to fingertip control of your environment, the biggest development will be a projector called an everywhere display. Imagine being able to transform any surface of the room into a touchscreen. Who needs a mouse when you can interact with the computer through simple gestures detected by sensors?
When humans interact, they use speech and gesture and gaze, and we expect to be able to interact with computers that way in the future.
Inside the lodge, the needs of the beaver are remarkably simple. Thanks to their hard labor in the fall, their large pond acts as a huge refrigerator. The beaver family stocked up for winter by collecting plants and storing them in the bottom of their pond. Unlike some rodents, beavers don't hibernate. So when winter arrives and the surface of the pond freezes, the beavers can retrieve stored logs and keep chewing until spring. The beaver is only number 5 in the countdown because during the months of winter, it can sit back and feast on the fruits of its labor. Things are very different for our next contender, which has to keep hard at work almost all year round. In the tropical forests of Australia and Southeast Asia lives an animal with a mega workload. This is a megapode, a name that literally means big feet. It's one of a family of birds that uses their enormous claws to build huge mounds of compost. Megapodes are number 4 in the countdown because for 11 months of the year, they shift over 45 kilograms of earth every day. All that hard work goes into making a nest with underfloor heating. Beneath the layer of dirt, decomposing plant matter generates heat to incubate their egg. But overheating can do just as much damage as the cold. So it's the male megapode's job to make sure the temperature is just right. Many biologists believe that some megapodes use their sensitive beak as a thermometer to ensure the temperature remains around 32 degrees. If the heap is too hot, then the birds will remove material to provide ventilation. If it's too cool, then they'll bury the egg deeper in the pile. Eventually, these birds can end up with a mound that measures 15 meters in diameter and weighs in at 50 tons. It takes an extraordinary amount of hard work to make a pyramid of soil, or stone. The Great Pyramid of Giza was the tallest building in the world for 4,000 years. Today, it's still hard to imagine how Bronze-Age people built such an impressive tomb. It took a workforce of 25,000 people 23 years to build the Great Pyramid. Somehow they shifted more than 2.5 million blocks of stone. Even though each block weighed about 2.5 tons, these ancient workaholics must have shifted about 300 blocks into place every day. That's 1 block every 2.5 minutes. While the ancient Egyptians did all that work just to house one dead pharaoh, the pyramid of the megapode is built for one new life. After 49 days underground, the chick makes its way to the top of the heap. After such a long incubation period, the chick is so well developed it's ready to fend for itself as soon as it surfaces. That means Dad doesn't have to worry about childcare. However, his hard work continues because he keeps maintaining his mound so that it's ready for next year's breeding season. Up until now, our contenders have all had a little seasonal downtime, but things are starting to change. Some workaholics can work every day of the year, even when they're 101. And later, we'll meet obsessive-compulsive cleaners that take their life in their hands both in the air and underwater. Wouldn't it be nice if you had someone to look after you?
Rollo, answer the door.
Yes, ma'am. Rollo, get.
For years, we've dreamed of a machine that could do all our work for us. Yet, in the natural world, the busiest cleaner on the planet has been in action for millions of years. It sets up shop on tropical reefs around the world and is open for business during daylight hours. The cleaner wrasse is number 3 on the countdown because it's in demand 7 days a week, 52 weeks of the year. The wrasse darts all over its clients to clean scales, gills, and even the inside of mouths. In a single day, a cleaner wrasse may eat over 1,000 parasites. But these fish don't work this hard for free. Their diet consists of nothing but the pests on other animals' bodies. Even deadly predators like the moray eel will put its ferocious nature aside to get groomed. Cleaner fish are rarely eaten by their clients. If the wrasse feels it's in danger, all it needs to do is vibrate its fins against the client to remind them that it's doing them a favor. But wrasse are not the only fastidious cleaners with a dangerous job. If you hate washing the windows at your place, spare a thought for the guys that have to clean the Empire State Building. Its 103 stories have more than 6,500 windows. For nearly 70 years, window washers had to hang from harnesses outside the building. Today, new technology means that the cleaners can work from inside, but it still takes a team of 4 people 3 months to complete the job. And then they start all over again. Back on the reef, the cleaner wrasse are also in constant demand, picking parasites off their clients. However, when the sun goes down, the wrasse finish work and head home to sleep. If only our next contenders kept such luxurious working hours.
The clarion call of industry sounds good morning to America's manpower. Along the roads to the factories, tens of thousands begin to mass. Into the silent buildings flows the life stream, the giant assembly plants.
We like to think that humans are the masters of manufacture, but our next contender has been running a successful factory business for 15 million years. Scuttling in to number 2 in the countdown are leafcutter ants. Their colony spends every hour of every day creating their own extreme cuisine. It's hard work feeding 8 million hungry mandibles. Just like the busiest factories, leafcutter ants divide up the work so that it's spread along an assembly line of different types of ant. The colony's largest worker ants are responsible for collecting foliage. They are such efficient leaf cutters that a colony can strip a tree bare in just one night. But the ants don't eat the leaves. Their digestive system can't break down plant fibers, so they have to pass them on to another part of the assembly line. The next factory workers are smaller, and it's their job to start the process of turning leaves into food. They chew up the foliage and add in a mixture of saliva and ant poop. These pellets of mulch are then collected by workers called gardener ants, because they look after a most unusual garden. A fungus grows on the chewed up leaves, and it's this fungus that fuels the whole leafcutter colony. Finally, the smallest ants, called the caretakers, harvest the crop of fungus and distribute it amongst the whole colony. By following 4 simple tasks, the fungus supply always meets the demand. It's the same method made popular by another famous workaholic. Henry Ford devoted his whole life to making motor cars, spending long hours at his factories that revolutionized the way we work. His continuous moving assembly lines with specialist division of labor fed the nation's appetite for cars. Ford reduced the time it took to assemble a car chassis from 12.5 hours down to just 2.5. By 1918, half of all the cars in America were Model T Fords. But Henry Ford and leafcutter ants know that even the hardest workers need a break. Entomologists have observed that these ants work in shifts. While the farm is being worked 24/7, the ants are allowed to take regular breaks. Leafcutter ants may work incredibly long hours, but you won't find our most extreme workaholics sleeping on the job. We've seen the 9 contenders. They're the busiest of the busy. Only one animal is a more extreme workaholic. Back in 1980, the Hollywood movie 9 to 5 told the story of an office of overworked women suffering under a tyrannical boss. Yet these working girls had it easy compared to the most extreme workaholics in the countdown. There's another group of females that don't just work 9 to 5. From the moment they're born, they work all day and all night, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Imagine if we were like the animal at number 1 in the countdown. As soon as we were born, we'd have to start working. Our first job would be to clean the house and look after our younger sisters. As we got older, we'd be put into housing construction. And since we live in a house of wax, we could even supply our own building material. Eventually, we'd be promoted to go out and get the groceries, which would mean commuting up to 100 kilometers every day. No wonder people say they're as busy as a bee. Even the honeybee royalty has to work hard. The queen bee may have subjects feeding and pampering her, but she's still expected to produce an egg every minute of the day. This can mean more than 200,000 eggs a year. And it's no surprise that her babies are called workers. From the moment a worker bee hatches, it starts on a progression of jobs. First, it cleans up around the honeycomb. Then, after a few days, glands on its abdomen start producing wax, which it uses to build and repair comb. After a while, the bees move on to guarding the nest and producing honey. Finally, at just 3 weeks old, the worker bee leaves the hive to forage for pollen and nectar. The queen bee can keep up her workaholic ways for over 5 years, but worker bees are not so lucky. They have to fit all their jobs into just 35 days before they die. There's no such thing as a peaceful retirement for honeybees, or for one remarkable human. In 2001, Harold Fisher of Detroit was presented with an award for being America's oldest worker. Even after his 100th birthday, Harold was still working 5 days a week as chief architect of Harold Fisher and Associates, the firm he founded 56 years earlier. In a working career that's lasted over 85 years, he's helped design over 500 churches.
If you love it, you want to live. You don't think of dying. And you know if you retire, that you know, no possibility you'll be dead shortly.
For honeybees, there's no chance of retirement, especially when there's a hive of 50,000 hungry mouths to feed. Only the oldest worker bees leave the hive, and it's the hardest job they'll ever have. To make just half a kilogram of honey, the workers have to visit over 2 million flowers. Collectively, they'd make 10 million trips back to the hive and clock up a total distance of 90,000 kilometers, the equivalent of flying around the world twice. And once they're back in the hive, the hard work continues. The bees have to cough up the nectar and swallow it again and again. That's how they concentrate the honey before packing it away in wax storage containers. Inside the perpetually dark nest, there's no need to stop when the sun goes down. And there's so much to do that some honeybees work 24-hour shifts without a break. And that's why, when it comes to workaholics, the honeybee really is the most extreme.